Kaiba versus Aigami. During the Dark Side of Dimensions, the villain of the film Aigami duels 3 times. The first duel is against Kaiba, where Aigami is left in a losing situation thanks to a Deus Ex Obelisk, if you will. The duel, unfortunately, is abandoned before any outcome can be reached. The second duel is against Yugi, where Yugi just straight up wins with a really powerful combo. Finally, after becoming Dark Aigami, he duels against both Yugi and Kaiba together, where in the end, he ultimately loses thanks to the combined might of Yugi and Kaiba and little tiny help from the Pharaoh himself. So the question then becomes, out of these 3 duels, was there ever a chance for Aigami to potentially win? Or perhaps could Yugi and Kaiba have won a little bit earlier had they done things a little bit different? We won't know unless we jump into the duel. First things first though, it's worth noting that all 3 of these duels are dimension duels. The rules are identical to a regular duel, except monsters are summoned without tributes. This type of summoning is called a dimension summon. When a monster is dimension summoned, you use your life force to determine their attack and defense values. The max you can give them is their original stats. Basically, when they're summoned to the field, they come with 0 attack and defense. You can put 100% of your life force into the monster to give them their max stats. You can give them 50%, give them half. You can do this for every single monster. All it really determines is when your monster blows up, how much physical damage you take, and another thing. Players do not take battle damage except from direct attacks. When a dimension summoned monster is destroyed, depending on its position, the owner takes damage equal to the attack it had when it was destroyed. Simple enough, right? We're used to when 2 monsters battle, the difference is subtracted from the losing monster's life points, where in this case, whatever the attack of the destroyed monster was, the owner takes that as damage, which I will be referring to as dimension damage. We're all caught up. I have a full video on this if you want to check that out. But for now, the duel begins and Kaiba goes first. He draws, and his opening hand consists of Blue Eye's alternative white dragon, Crystal Dragon, Lord of D, Counter Gate, Dragon's Orb, and High Speed Aria. Kaiba starts by dimension summoning his Crystal Dragon into attack. He gives it 100% of its attack and defense points. Note, for the rest of these duels, the rest of the movie pretty much, everybody will give every single monster they dimension summon 100% of their attack and defense points. So just assume for the rest of the duel and the rest of the duels as well, they always be summoned 100% power. I will admit, it's a bit weird to introduce a mechanic and then never use it for the entirety of the movie, because there's some beneficial abilities of summoning a monster with less attack. Say you summon a monster in defense, well, why summon it with 2,000 defense points when you can summon it with 0 defense points, and then when it's destroyed, you don't take any battle damage? I don't know, I just thought it was a little bit odd, but yeah, they summon everything with 100% power. Kaiba ends his turn by setting Dragon's Orb and Counter Gate face down. It's Aigami's turn, and he draws. His opening hand consists of 2 copies of Vijam the Cubic Seed, Cubic Ascension, Cubic Rebirth, Cubic Mandala, and a mysterious card. What is this mysterious card? Well, he's never going to use it throughout the entirety of the duel, but he is going to set it face down in a minute. So it needs to be something that we know is in his deck and that can't be used under a specific scenario, basically. So I'm going to say this mysterious card is Unification of the Cubic Lords. So keep that in mind. It can't do anything for the rest of this duel, but it's there just in case it ever becomes necessary. And with that, Aigami dimension summons his Vijam the Cubic Seed into attack. He ends his turn by setting Cubic Ascension, Cubic Rebirth, Cubic Mandala, and Unification of the Cubic Lords face down. It's Kaiba's turn, and the penultimate turn of the duel. He draws and gets a second copy of Crystal Dragon. He dimension summons it to the field. Kaiba enters his battle phase and attacks Aigami's Vijam. Due to Vijam's effect, it cannot be destroyed by battle. Also, due to dimension duel rules, 2 monsters battling each other, they don't inflict any battle damage. One of these monsters had to be destroyed in order to inflict dimension damage. That didn't happen, so no damage is dealt from the battle. Regardless, the second effect of Vijam activates. Since Vijam battled, it moves into the spell and trap zone, but not before placing a cubic counter on the monster that attacked it. Due to this counter, Crystal Dragon is unable to attack or use its effects. Kaiba attempts to attack Aigami directly with his second Crystal Dragon. However, Aigami activates his set Cubic Ascension. Now, since an opponent's monster declared an attack, Aigami can special summon one V-Jam the Cubic Seed from his deck, and then change the attack target to it instead. Crystal Dragon is forced to attack the new V-Jam summoned to the field. No damage is dealt, but V-Jam's effect places a counter on the second Crystal Dragon before moving itself into the Spell and Trap zone. Before Kaiba ends his battle phase, he activates his set Dragon's Orb, which prevents Dragon-type monsters from having their effects negated until the end of the turn. This cleanses the two Crystal Dragons for long enough to allow Kaiba to activate their effects. Since they attacked, they can both add one Dragon-type monster from Kaiba's deck straight to his hand. Kaiba adds 2 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon to his hand. Now, with the Blue Eyes in hand, Kaiba reveals one of them in order to Dimension Special Summon his Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon to the field. He does this as a quick effect, which, as we know in the real world, it's not a quick effect, you have to do it normally. I assume in the anime, it must have been a quick effect because he's doing this during the battle phase, so I don't think it's shenanigans, I think it's just an anime thing, but it's fine. Kaiba orders Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon to attack Aigami directly. However, since Aigami is being attacked directly, he is now able to activate his Cubic Rebirth. This lets him place a cubic counter on the attacking monster, causing its attack to go down to 0 and its effects to be negated. However, by doing this, Kaiba is allowed to summon as many monsters as possible from his hand, deck, or grave with the same name as that monster, but they too also have a cubic counter placed on them. Following that, Aigami is then allowed to summon one level 4 or lower cubic monster from his hand. Kaiba summons 2 Blue Eyes White Dragons in his hand to the field, while Aigami special summons his third V-Jam from his hand to the field. Kaiba sets High Speed Aria face down and ends his turn. Fun fact, that High Speed Aria that Kaiba has set face down, not usable at the moment. High Speed Aria is basically a way of using a normal spell card in your hand as a quick play. So you activate the trap and it lets you discard the normal spell to activate it, so during your opponent's turn. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any spells in his hand, so this set card doesn't do anything at the moment, so I guess Kaiba's hoping if he draws a spell, which is something that he could possibly do with another card he's got face down, he might be able to use that as well. We'll talk about that when we get to it, but for now, it's Aigami's turn, and the final turn of the duel. He draws and gets Dark Garnix, the Cubic Beast. Aigami activates the effect of the 2 V-Jam the Cubic Seeds in his Spell and Trap zones. This allows them to special summon themselves to the field. Now, fun fact, the way the bigger cubic monsters work is quite a bit different from the way they work in the real world. It's actually quite interesting how they work in the anime, so I'll quickly go through what they do now. Basically, the bigger cubic monsters in the anime stack the cubic seeds beneath them. By doing this, it gives them attack points equal to whatever it says on the card, times however many of those seeds are underneath them. You can think of the bigger cubic monsters kind of like Xyz monsters, so you got the big cubic monster on the top and the little ones underneath as it's like units, if you will. So that's kind of how they work. What's cool about them as well is that after they destroy a monster, they can upgrade themselves into a bigger form until they reach their final evolution line's ultimate form. There are 2 cubic evolution lines in the movie. There is the attacking cubic evolution line and the burn damage cubic line. The attack line, Dark Garnix the Cubic Beast, that evolves into Blade Garudia the Cubic Beast, that evolves into Buster Gundil the Cubic Behemoth. The second line, the effect damage line, it consists of Yugioh the Cubic King, into Vulcan Dragny the Cubic King, into Indiora Doomvault the Cubic Emperor. So, with all that in mind, Aigami stacks 1 cubic seed underneath Dark Garnix in order to Dimension Special Summon it. With 1 monster stacked beneath it, it gains 1000 attack points. Aigami enters his battle phase and uses Dark Garnix to attack and destroy Blue Eyes. No damage is dealt from the destruction, since Kaiba's Dimension Summoned monster had 0 attack points upon its destruction. So, 0 dimension damage was dealt. Now, you might have been thinking that, oh, but it originally had 3000, it was weakened down to 0. That's not how it works in Dimension Duel. It's whatever the stats are at the time of the destruction. Okay. Since Garnix destroyed a monster by battle, Aigami activates its effects. It returns itself back into the deck, and then adds Blade Garudia, the Cubic Beast, from his deck to his hand. Also, the cubic seeds stacked under Garnix are summoned back to the field. Still in his battle phase, Aigami activates the quick effect of Blade Garudia, which lets it summon itself to the field using 2 cubic seeds. It gains 1000 attack for each. This card's unique effect is that it's allowed to attack twice, and so Blade Garudia attacks and destroys the 2 remaining Blue Eyes White Dragons. Since they too had 0 attack points, no dimension damage is dealt again. However, since Garudia destroyed a monster, it returns itself back into the deck, thanks to its effect, and then adds Buster Gundil the Cubic Behemoth. The 2 cubic seeds that were stacked under it are also summoned back to the field. Aigami again activates the quick effect of the new cubic monster in his hand. He summons it to the field by using all 3 cubic seeds to stack beneath it. This gives it 3000 attack points and 3 attacks. Gundil attacks and destroys Kaiba's 2 crystal dragons. Since they were destroyed, their attack points are dealt to Kaiba as dimension damage. With only 3000 life points left, Aigami uses the 3rd and final attack to attack Kaiba directly, attempting to go for game. However, due to being attacked directly, Kaiba activates his set, Countergate, to negate the attack and instead draw a card. If the card he draws is a monster, he can normal summon it immediately. But not only that, it's never referenced in the anime, but with his other set card, High Speed Aria, if he gets a spell card, he's also able to use that during the opponent's turn by activating it. Cool combo. Aigami, not wanting to take the risk of Kaiba getting a monster that he can summon, activates his face-down Cubic Mandala. This lets him special summon all monsters in his opponent's graveyard that were destroyed this turn to the opponent's field with a cubic counter and their attack reduced to 0. As long as these monsters are on the field, all monster effects in the opponent's hand, field, and graveyard are negated. If all of these monsters are removed from the field, however, this card will destroy itself. Since there are now 5 monsters on Kaiba's field, there is no space for whatever monster he draws to be summoned to an empty zone. And you might be thinking, wait, what if he draws a big monster? Can't he tribute 2 of those monsters? No, from my understanding, in the way that Dimension Duels work, you are not allowed to tribute monsters the standard way. You have to Dimension summon them. So that means, say he drew his last copy of Blue Eyes White Dragon in his deck, he can't summon it, since he can't regular tribute summon it to the field. So this is quite the pickle for Kaiba. He is in a lose-lose situation. How is he going to get out of it? Well, it appears Kaiba has absolutely no plans of drawing from his deck. Kaiba draws from the very earth itself. Through sheer will, and probably only possible since they are dueling in the resting place of the Pharaoh, the Millennium Items, and the Egyptian gods, Kaiba is able to draw Obelisk the Tormentor. Since he drew a monster, Kaiba is now free to summon it to the field. And since it is an Egyptian god card, it is able to force itself onto the field, bypassing the Dimension Duel rules. Kaiba tributes the 3 blue eyes on his side of the field. Also, Cubic Mandala's lingering effect to negate the effects of all monsters on the field doesn't work on Obelisk. Why? Well, that's because...
But your monster can't use its abilities! It's no monster. It's a god!
Kaiba activates the quick effect of Obelisk. By tributing 2 monsters on his side of the field, he can inflict damage to Aigami equal to Obelisk's attack, and then destroy all monsters on Aigami's side of the field. Kaiba tributes the 2 crystal dragons to activate this effect. Aigami takes 4000 effect damage, and then 3000 dimension damage since Buster Gundil was destroyed with 3000 attack. At this point, Mokuba tries to leave with the Millennium Puzzle. However, Aigami abandons the duel so they can steal a fragment of it. The duel ends with no conclusion. So, what would have happened if the duel would have continued? Well, Kaiba is ending the duel with Obelisk the Tormentor on his field and a set card that he can't use just yet. Aigami is ending this duel with no monsters on his side of the field, a set card that, while I can't prove it's that face-down fusion card, it doesn't seem to be able to do anything, so it's safe to say this card wouldn't help him. However, he does have some stuff he can do still. While he does have Cubic Ascension in the grave, in the anime, it doesn't have its graveyard effect. However, Buster Gun Dill in the anime does have a graveyard effect, which is that it can banish itself from the grave to add V-Jam from the grave to his hand. All the V-Jams would have gone to the graveyard since this monster was destroyed, so he can summon this one back in defense and just let it sit there. It might even be alright in attack position. I believe since Obelisk has its Egyptian god Uber immunity, V-Jam's ability to weaken the Obelisk, meaning the counter that would be put on the monster wouldn't work against it. So I think the ball is in Kaiba's court. All he needs to do is get 2 monsters on the field. We know for a fact he's got Lord of D in his hands. That's 1 monster. So if you get 1 more monster on the field, use Obelisk's effect again, wipe the field, deal 4,000 damage. Kaiba should win. So it's hard to say who for sure would have won, but I'm pretty confident it would have been Kaiba. In hindsight as well, it's worth mentioning, Aigami probably shouldn't have used Cubic Mandala to summon all the monsters to Kaiba's side of the field, but obviously there's no way he could have known he was going to draw Obelisk the Tormentor and tribute the entire field to get it to the field. And just to address the Deus Ex Kaiba drawing Obelisk from the very earth itself, yes, it's a funky thing to do, but keep in mind that Aigami is dueling with rules that are perfect for his deck since he has so many 0 attack point monsters. It benefits him to have these 0 attack monsters that he can just crash into opponent's monsters and not take any damage. So in that sense, the game is in Aigami's favor. So the fact that Kaiba could draw Obelisk from the earth itself, I think it's fine. And I think it was confirmed in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links that this event could only happen this one time, because they are literally dueling in the presence of the Pharaoh's tomb and everything. So Kaiba could only do it there. Yeah, that was the first duel. Let's see how Yugi does against Aigami now. The duel begins and Yugi goes first. He draws and his opening hand consists of Sentry Soldier of Stone, Silent Swordsman level 5, Dimension Mirage, Dimension Guardian, Warrior's Devotion, and Digger Destiny. Yugi starts by dimension summoning his Sentry Soldier of Stone in defense. He then sets Digger Destiny and Warrior's Devotion face down and ends his turn. Technically, Yugi could have summoned his Sentry Soldier of Stone in defense with 0 of his soul put into the monster, so it would have had 0 defense. So that would have meant that this monster would have acted as a wall, so even if it was destroyed, Yugi wouldn't have taken any damage. But as we'll see in a bit, this means Aigami had to put a bit more effort into getting over the monster since he had 2,000 defense. So, I guess it's fine. Yugi could have summoned it with 0 defense, but he did the right thing in this case of summoning it with 2,000 defense. So, yeah, it was fine. It's Aigami's turn, and he draws. His opening hand consists of 3 copies of V-Jam the Cubic Seed, Yugioh the Cubic King, Cubic Karma, and a mysterious card. Yet again, I'm going to say this mysterious card is Unification of the Cubic Lords. Aigami starts by dimension summoning his V-Jam to the field into attack. Now, since there is a Cubic Seed on Aigami's field, he can dimension special summon his Yugioh, the Cubic King, by stacking it on top of V-Jam. It gains 800 attack for each Cubic Seed stacked beneath it. Due to its effect, when it is summoned, it inflicts 800 damage to Yugi. Aigami then activates his continuous spell, Cubic Karma. Now, Aigami can stack all V-Jam the Cubic Seeds in his hand underneath a Cubic monster. Also, when a Cubic Seed monster is special summoned during the opponent's turn by the effect of a Cubic monster, Cubic Karma can be sent to the graveyard to halve the opponent's life points. With 3 Cubic Seeds stacked beneath Yugioh, now with more attack than Sentry Soldier of Stone's defense, he attacks and destroys it. Yugi takes 2,000 dimension damage since Sentry Soldier of Stone was destroyed in defense position. Since Yugi took damage, he activates his set Digger Destiny, which lets him draw a card. He gets Dimension Sphinx. Since Yugioh battled, it returns itself to the deck, summons back the Cubic Seed stacked under it, and then adds Vulcan Dragny the Cubic King. Aigami activates the quick effect of Vulcan Dragny the Cubic King in his hand to stack 2 V-Jams on his field underneath it to special summon it. When it is summoned, it deals 800 damage. With 1600, it attacks Yugi directly. Now, since it's battled, Dragni returns itself to the deck, summons the seeds back to the field, and then adds Indiora Doomvault the Cubic Emperor from his deck to his hand. Aigami stacks all 3 cubic seeds under it to use its quick effect to dimension special summon it to the field. When it is summoned, it too deals 800 damage to Yugi. And now, with 2400 attack, Aigami attacks Yugi directly, attempting to go for game. However, Yugi activates his final face down, Warrior's Devotion. This lets him discard a warrior-type monster to decrease an attacking monster's attack by the sent monster's attack permanently. Yugi discards Silent Swordsman level 5 to reduce the monster's attack by 2300. Yugi takes only 100 direct damage. Aigami ends his turn. It's Yugi's turn, and the penultimate turn of the duel. He draws and gets Lord Gaia the Fierce Knight. Yugi dimension summons Lord Gaia the Fierce Knight to the field. He enters his battle phase and attacks and destroys Indiora Doomvault. Since Indiora only had 100 attack, Aigami only takes 100 dimension damage. Not only that though, due to Indiora's effect, when it is destroyed, it returns itself to the hand and then summons the cubic seed stacked under it back to the field. Now, since a cubic seed was summoned during the opponent's turn by a cubic monster's effect, Cubic Karma's second effect activates. It sends itself to the graveyard to halve Yugi's life points. Yugi sets Dimension Mirage, Dimension Guardian, and Dimension Sphinx face down, and ends his turn. It's Aigami's turn, and the final turn of the duel. He draws and gets Cubic Wave. Aigami again stacks his 3 copies of V-Jam to dimension special summon Indiora back to the field. Since it was summoned, it deals 800 effect damage. Since Aigami special summoned a monster with attack greater than that of Lord Gaia, the effect of Lord Gaia increases its own attack by 700 until the end of the turn. Unable to get over Lord Gaia, Aigami activates his Cubic Wave. This lets him double the attack of his monster and halve the attack of Yugi's monster. Aigami enters his battle phase and orders Indiora to attack Lord Gaia. However, this is where Yugi begins his insta-win combo. He activates his continuous face-down trap, Dimension Sphinx. This card can only be activated by targeting one face-up attack position monster that Yugi controls. During the battle step, if it is attacked by an opponent's monster with higher attack, Yugi can inflict damage to the opponent equal to the difference between the attacking monster's attack and the targeted monster's. Yugi then activates his second continuous trap, Dimension Guardian. This card targets Lord Gaia. Now, it cannot be destroyed by a battle or by card effects. Finally, Yugi activates his last continuous trap, Dimension Mirage. This time he targets one face-up attack position monster the opponent controls. Now, at the end of the damage step, when it attacks a monster, but the attack target was not destroyed by that battle, Yugi can banish one monster from his grave. Now that monster must attack again in a row. By combining all these 3 pieces together, Yugi has solidified his win. Indiora attacks Gaia. The difference is dealt to Aigami as damage. Gaia isn't destroyed thanks to Dimension Guardian, and no damage is dealt thanks to the rules of the Dimension Duels. Since Indiora failed to destroy Gaia, the monster it attacked, Yugi is able to banish one of the monsters in his grave to force it to attack again. Indiora attacks Gaia, the difference is dealt to Aigami as damage. Gaia isn't destroyed thanks to Dimension Guardian, and no damage is dealt to Yugi since no battle damage is dealt in Dimension Duels. Since Indiora failed to destroy the monster it attacked again, Yugi banishes another one of his monsters in the grave to force it to attack again. Indiora attacks Gaia, the difference is dealt to Aigami as damage. Gaia isn't destroyed thanks to Dimension Guardian, and no damage is dealt to Yugi since no battle damage is dealt during Dimension Duels. And finally now, the damage is enough to reduce Aigami's life points down to 0. Yugi wins the duel. The moral of this duel, this was verily stacked in Yugi's favor. He absolutely played this duel perfectly, and Aigami, he did everything he could, but he had no chance to win this duel. I don't think there was really any real way of him changing the outcome of this duel with the cards that he had, the cards that Yugi had. Literally from Yugi's second turn, he had all the pieces in place to go for game. The only thing worth mentioning about this duel is that Yugi's combo required a big difference in attack points between his defending monster and the opponent's attacking monster, which is something that Aigami lent into when he used that cubic card to reduce the opponent's monster and increase his own. Obviously, he had to use that to get over Yugi's monster, but because of that, he unfortunately sealed his own fate, since Yugi only had 2 monsters in his graveyard that he could banish, so he could only use this infinite loop twice. Well, let's look at the final duel now. The final duel begins, and Dark Aigami goes first. His opening hand consists of 3 copies of Crimson Nova, the Dark Cubic Lord, Unification of the Cubic Lords, Cubic Defense, and a mysterious card. Now, we've run into this issue for the 3rd time in a row. However, this time I can't just say this card is Unification of the Cubic Lords, because he actually has Unification of the Cubic Lords in his hand. So what could this card be? How about a 2nd copy of Unification of the Cubic Lords? That'll do me. Aigami dimension summons his Crimson Nova, the Cubic Lord, to the field. Thanks to this monster's effect, it is unaffected by other monsters' effects, whose original attack is 3000 or less. When this card destroys a monster by battle, it can make a 2nd attack. And finally, during Aigami's end phase, each player takes 3000 damage. Aigami sets Unification of the Cubic Lords and Cubic Defense face down and ends his turn. Crimson Nova's final effect activates, everybody takes 3000 damage. It's Kaiba's turn, and he draws. His opening hand consists of Pandemic Dragon, Crystal Avatar, and 4 mysterious cards. Unfortunately, in this duel, Kaiba doesn't get to do too much, but it's just one of those things. So yeah, no idea what these 4 cards were. Kaiba dimension summons Pandemic Dragon to the field. He activates its effect by paying 500 life points. He attempts to decrease the attack of Aigami's monster by 500. However, since Crimson Nova is unaffected by the effects of monsters with less than 3000 attack, nothing happens. Kaiba ends his turn by setting Crystal Avatar face down. It's Yugi's turn, and the penultimate turn of the duel. He draws. His opening hand consists of Silver Gadget, Gold Gadget, Clear Karibo, Spiritual Swords of Revealing Light, Metal Hold the Moving Blockade, and a mysterious card. Don't know what that is. Ain't got a clue. Yugi dimension summons Silver Gadget to the field. Since it was summoned, its effect lets Yugi special summon another level 4 machine-type monster in his hand. He dimension special summons Gold Gadget. Yugi sets Spiritual Swords of Revealing Light and Metal Hold the Moving Blockade face down and ends his turn. It's Dark Aigami's turn, and the final turn of the duel. He draws and gets a mysterious card. Dark Aigami moves straight into his battle phase and attacks one of Yugi's gadgets. However, Yugi activates his set Metal Hold the Moving Blockade Trap. This card summons itself as a trap monster. It then equips all gadgets on the field to itself to increase its attack by the combined attack of the equipped monsters. Not only that, but monsters that Aigami controls cannot target Yugi's monsters for attacks, except this one. Since Crimson Nova was mid-attack against Yugi, its attack redirects to Metal Hold. Before the attack can connect, since a monster Aigami controls would be destroyed by battle, he activates his Cubic Defense, preventing its destruction and letting him instead special summon 2 monsters from his hand with the exact same name as the monster that would be destroyed. He summons 2 more copies of Crimson Nova, the Dark Cubic Lord. Now, due to the wording of Metal Hold, it states that any monster that would attack Yugi has to attack Metal Hold. So since Kaiba is technically not a part of Yugi's field, that means that Aigami can attack Kaiba without being redirected to Metal Hold. And so, the second Crimson Nova attacks and destroys Kaiba's Pandemic Dragon. Kaiba takes 2500 dimension damage. Since Pandemic Dragon was destroyed, its effect activates. It reduces the attack of all monsters on the field by 1000. Due to Crimson Nova's protection effect, it is unaffected. However, Metal Hold isn't, and so friendly fire ensues. Now, weak enough, the third Crimson Nova attacks and destroys Metal Hold. Yugi takes 2200 dimension damage. Since 2 Crimson Novas destroyed monsters by battle, they both can attack again. One attacks Yugi directly while the other attacks Kaiba. Since both of them would lose from these direct attacks, Yugi activates his continuous trap, Spiritual Swords of Revealing Light, which lets him pay 1000 life points to negate an attack. He pays 2000 life points to negate both of the attacks. Now you'd think that was everything, but Aigami is not done. He activates, finally, his face down card, Unification of the Cubic Lords. This lets him fuse using monsters on his field. He merges the 3 Crimson Novas to make his ultimate monster, Crimson Nova Trinity, the Dark Cubic Lord. Its effect is that it cannot be targeted or destroyed by an opponent's card effects. When it attacks, the opponent's life points are halved. When it destroys a monster by battle, it can make a second attack. If the wielder should take effect damage, inflict the same amount of damage to the opponent as well. And so, with Crimson Nova Trinity, he attacks Yugi directly. Since Crimson Nova declares an attack, Yugi and Kaiba's life points are both halved. But that's not all. Since an opponent's monster declared a direct attack with a monster whose attack is greater than or equal to Kaiba's life points, he's now able to activate his face down Crystal Avatar. This special summons an effect monster with attack equal to his life points, in this case 1000. The attack target then becomes Crystal Avatar. Crystal Avatar is destroyed. Kaiba has saved Yugi from defeat at the cost of his own life points. Kaiba is eliminated.
Why did you do that?
For him. The Pharaoh.
The effect of Crystal Avatar activates after its destruction. It inflicts its attack as damage to the opponent. Aigami takes 1000 damage. However, due to Crimson Nova Trinity's effect, the 1000 damage he took is also directed at Yugi as well. However, Yugi activates the effect of his Clear Karibo in his hand. By sending it from his hand to the grave, he can reduce effect damage to 0. Now, since Crimson Nova destroyed a monster by battle this turn, it can attack again. Crimson Nova Trinity attempts to attack Yugi directly again, which yet again, since it declared an attack, it cuts Yugi's life points in half again. Before the attack can collide, Yugi activates the second effect of Clear Karibo in his graveyard. Since an opponent's monster is declaring a direct attack, he can banish it from the grave to draw a card. If it is a monster, he can special summon it. Then the opponent's monster will be forced to attack it. I just want to point out that this is very similar to what Kaiba did, where Kaiba drew a card. If he drew a monster, he could summon it. He drew his Obelisk the Tormentor, so he used the power of the Egyptian gods to do that. Yugi's going to do the exact same thing, but slightly different. At this point, Yugi cannot continue the duel and collapses. However, Atem returns back to the living world and takes over the duel for a single draw. He gets Palladium Oracle Mahad. Thanks to Clear Karibo, it is special summoned to the field into attack. Crimson Nova's attack is redirected to it. Thanks to the effect of Mahad, since it is battling a dark monster, its attack is doubled. Crimson Nova Trinity is destroyed by the battle. 4500 dimension damage is dealt to Dark Aigami since his monster had that much attack. And with that, Dark Aigami loses the duel. That was the dimension duels with Aigami done. Overall, Aigami couldn't have won these duels. Playing against Yugi himself and Kaiba at their prime, so he's not standing a chance against either of them. Yeah, both of them needed like a little bit of a Deus Ex thing to get him out of the situation, but keep in mind they were all dueling under Aigami's house rules, so he had the advantage with his deck, basically. If he had some different cubic monsters in this final duel, he might have had a better chance. If he had the multiple attackers instead, probably could have done a bit better. Let me know what you thought of these duels in the comment section below. How did you feel about the Obelisk Deus Ex and the Pharaoh Atem Deus Ex? Were they fine, or did you feel like they robbed the characters of truly cementing their wins? And why didn't we get Kaiba get a guaranteed win against Aigami? Instead, we got the duel got interrupted, but it looked like Kaiba was going to win. Why can't we just have him have the W for once? But yeah, thank you all for watching. Catch you later. Bye, everyone.